Hello and welcome to Upload,
a podcast by those who upload for those who want to,
or who already do,
and anyone else for that matter.
My name is Lionheart and I've been creating content for over a decade.
And my name's Midgeman and I've been trying to create content for almost a decade.
Together with some of our friends and fellow content creators, we're going to be exploring the great big world of content creation.
We'll be looking into the serious topics that face content creators today.
Because if someone said that to me like in person, or said that kind of stuff to me, you know, IRL, I wouldn't take it. So why would I take it like online? Why would I hide aspects of sort of my identity?
As well as some less serious topics.
I've been blindsided by the fact that one of your old live streams is called Suck My Missile for like the last
Sorry, what? So sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Upload.
Hello and welcome to Upload, the content creator podcast for those who want to upload, those who do upload, and everyone else for that matter. My name is Midgeman.
And I'm Lionheart.
Before we get on with today's podcast, please remember to like, rate, subscribe, turn on any auto downloaders, and if you want to get in touch with the podcast, you can do so via our comments section on YouTube or Spotify, or via our email, hello@uploadpodcast.co.uk. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about like hard tech. We're going to be talking about GPUs, CPUs, RAM, our builds, upgrades we need, upgrades we want, anything to do with how to kind of build a content creation PC and like what things you should be looking for, and like the key features surrounding that. This has also come up in conversation where we're juggling between the idea of doing, you know, a multiple PC setup with like a separate render rig or an editing rig, and the difference in the cost weight benefits of doing that, because you've done that in the past. There's so many options today that I think it's worth just discussing, because I think that in itself can be daunting, especially if you're going from being a gamer and then you've got to start thinking about, oh gosh, my PC now needs to not just run Crysis, but also you know, be able to render a video, stream a video, upload a video. What kind of internet speed am I going to need?
Yeah, so many people don't think about it. They just assume it's going to be fine, and then you'll have to find weird janky solutions like I did for a while, and then get it disrupted when seagulls nest in the antenna. That was fun.
Okay, I think we need that story.
Okay, I've got to open with the seagull story. Okay, yeah, so in our last house before we moved here, which has a glorious dedicated fiber 1,000 down, 1,000 up symmetric service.
Lucky.
Yeah. When we bought our first house back in 2017, I did not think about internet provisioning for it. I just assumed, yeah, we can get internet. Living at my parents, we had an 80 down, 20 up, which is the most you could get out of the typical copper communications lines in the UK. Anything more than that, then you need either like a few copper lines spliced together essentially for something called like G-Fast, I think it is, where you can get up to like 330 and 50 upload, but it's not really done because it's quite expensive. The main way is to jump either into Virgin Media's own proprietary connections, but they don't offer symmetric packages, or you get dedicated fiber, which back in 2017 was basically in London and maybe a few other key major cities, and even then not really that widespread. It's now actually, we're getting to a stage where there's quite a reasonable rollout, and there's a lot of community fiber projects in the UK that are trying to service small rural communities as well as towns outside of major cities, which is good. We're not quite, you know, we're not there at the finishing line of everyone having full access to fiber, but that's obviously, I think it's still the government push of doing that by 2030, or it keeps getting pushed back. Right now, there are a lot more projects going on because a lot of companies are seeing the value, and there's a lot of independent startups, in fact, springing up all around the country that are deciding that they'll front the cost of laying fiber themselves because they know they can easily recoup that fee by getting a few thousand people subscribed, because if they're the only fiber provider there, they win basically, because they can provide a very fast service with minimal maintenance and cost once the fiber's actually laid. But yeah, we bought the house 2017, didn't think about internet, got there and was like, oh, I'll just do a speed check on like OpenReach, what we can get. I could get a maximum if I was lucky and I was not close to the cabinet, because cabinet distance as well impacts your speed. The maximum speed I could get was like 32 down, and then anywhere between 0.2 up to 2 to 3 up, which is what I started years ago uploading videos to YouTube on, but it was like I'd have to leave videos uploading overnight for them to finish in time. So I was like, that's not practical. I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. So after we like put the offer in on the house and stuff like that, I then spent the following like 3 or 4 months while we were going through the legal stuff that you have to do for buying a house and exchanging, well, buying and everything else. And I found a local company that offered a wireless fiber service, and I was like, how the heck does that work? So essentially they had some dedicated fiber lines run down to them into a big office building, and they then beamed them out via dedicated wireless antenna systems across multiple mast relays using the same wavelength airspace that was previously used by terrestrial TV. That's obviously now completely freed up because they switched that off. So it's a part of the reason why they was looking to switch from that was, one, because barely anyone was using just terrestrial wavelengths, and also because they knew they could monetize that bandwidth of the airspace for other alternative communication wireless frequencies and stuff like that. So yeah, this company then beamed the fiber via various dishes to your location if you were within a certain area of their coverage. They came, I think, the day we moved in and put an antenna on a massive pole up the side of the house. In fact, actually, it was the way I met my neighbors, because they couldn't get a signal to the nearest mast by putting the pole on the side of my house, but they could if they put it on the house at the other end of the 4 houses in the terrace row that we were on. They could get one from there. And luckily enough, one of my best friends from school was buying that house at the same time. So I went, Gary, can I? And he was also looking for internet. I was like, Gary, do you want this service? He was like, yeah, that sounds great because it's way better. I think we were going to get something like 120 down and like 30, 40 up. I was like, that's fine. That's totally workable for uploading and streaming from. As long as it's stable, it's fine. So I was like, Gary, you're up with having a really massive pole on the side of your house. And then they were like, yeah, that's fine. We will just need to run the cable along the houses to you. So I went and then knocked on the other 2 neighbors' doors and was like, hi, can I I've not moving in, not met you before. By the way, hi. Can I run a cable along the guttering to my house? We're not going to like clip it in, or we're just going to lie it in there and leave it, and it should be fine. Are you all right with that? And they were like, we don't really understand it, but yeah, sure, fine. So that was the way we met the neighbors, and they then clipped it along the side of the house and then put it straight into the room I was going to have as an office. So that was great because I didn't have to worry about it going downstairs or anything like that. It was straight into me at the office. And that worked on and off for about 3 or 4 years. Occasionally the service dropped a little bit and it dipped, and then it cut out for about 3 weeks. And when I called up the company, they were like, yeah, so we figured out the problem. Seagulls have nested in the main antenna relay at the hub point, and they're protected, so we can't like shoot them. We have to wait until they're done nesting, because if they're not in there, then we can apply to someone to come and have a look at it and then like remove it, or we can then move our antenna to a different spot. It's like we're trying to bounce you onto another antenna relay, but it's you're losing so much signal and speed through that. Although follow on from that, actually, then the last year we were living there, so you're 2021, just after New Year, my service, the speed was still there, but it was so unstable. It kept dropping out. I couldn't stream on it. I could upload,
I remember,
but I couldn't stream on it. You
started doing like test streams where you were doing like, you were trying to get all the data.
I used software bonding. I used a mixture of combining multiple internet sources into one, tried to make it stable. So I then bought a copper subscription to Now TV's broadband because they were the only one that had a 1 month rolling contract. I was like, if it's no good off, I don't want to be locked in for 12 months. So I was like, I'll just do a 1 month rolling. And I managed to get 40 down, 5 up on that, which still wasn't ideal for streaming. But I then bonded that to this wireless fiber service, which was giving me like 30 up. And it then sat at about 22, but it was a bit more stable. Still wasn't perfect. I was still dropping loads of frames every so often. The reason why the service suddenly went unstable was because the MOD installed a brand new bit of radar tech that happened to also use similar frequencies. And the company was like, we've tried talking to them, and they basically politely told us that no, they were not going to change frequencies on their really expensive multi-million-pound radar system. So they were like, oh, I was like, oh, I'm screwed basically, because I was like, I ended up moving my whole setup to my mum's house, because she had 80/20, and I was like, it's stable. I worked out of her front room for about a month or so. In fact, I ended up buying a few bits of gear, and I had 2 PCs. I left an older PC at home to do recordings on, and for streaming, I would commute to my mum's house 20 minutes away and jump on and do a stream for a few hours 2 or 3 times a week, which was grim because as a content creator, having to commute to go and do it was like, this defeats the point of working from home and having my little, like, everything contained. But then, yeah, this company came out and they were like, we're actually now experimenting with laying our own fiber. Would you like to be our guinea pig? We'll just charge you the same amount, which I think was like 40 quid a month. We'll charge you the same amount. We'll run you a cable out to your house in the next couple of weeks. We'll clip it all in, give you dedicated fiber, and you should get 900 symmetric. And I was like, yes, give me that, please. Yeah, they did that, and suddenly all fine. They took off the antennas off the side of the house. We didn't need them anymore. Gary was moving by that point as well. So when we bought this house, I made that a priority. I was like, I need to know what the internet situation is, because otherwise, like, I don't think we'll move there, to be honest. Like, I have to think I'm not going through that struggle again, because chances are I'm not going to be able to find a slightly janky workaround solution of a company that maybe has wireless, fiber that occasionally is affected by seagulls.
The best internet I have ever had was first year of uni.
Uni internets, yeah, dedicated lines.
I was off campus. It was a dedicated line, and I could rent essentially intranet space. I had 2 gig up and down for £25 a month. I used to upload 2 weeks of Let's Play series in a day in like 3 hours, close to 30 videos in 3 hours, like 30-minute 1080p Let's Plays. I wish I had that speed today.
It's mad, isn't it?
Because I would, well, if I did, this is going to bring me on to my next topic of storage and working through storage and stuff. But I have like drives. I have drive space. I have shared drives. I pay for drives on my business, which are like terabytes in storage. If I had 2 gig up and down, I would just run everything on like small hard drives on the PC and just upload and download things that I need when I need them. That would be so insane. Can you imagine streaming, like the power that you could stream off of on that? I mean, I do back then, but yeah. To have that internet again. I think I have like 500 down, 100 up now, because I am a Virgin Media customer, because they have a monopoly where I live. City Fiber were putting down new fiber cables, and they had a government contract to do so for my hometown. It's one of those things of there's a threshold that then after a certain thing with that contract, they can be bought out. They got bought out a road over from me, so I couldn't get gig fiber. Because Virgin Media bought out the contract to retain me as a customer. Yay.
So what you're saying is it would make you very sad if I shared this with you.
That would 800 down. That's weird that your down is worse than your up right now.
Yeah, it's like they don't traffic manage, but they have like they drop the download down a little bit, I think, to balance everything, like load balancing for everything on the estate, whereas the upload, I'm pretty much the only one that needs that. So I mean, it typically sits at within 30 meg of each other.
It's more that I have more than enough than a standard human would need. 500 down, what is it, 100 up is.
It's always nice though as a creator to have the excess.
Oh, sorry, no, it's 40 up. It's 530 down, 40 up right now.
So that's that. I hate that they do that, because it's basically them cheaping out on the network side of stuff, because the fiber's the same. The fiber can take symmetric speeds. It's them cheaping out at the other end and not willing to invest on that side to offer symmetric stuff. I mean, some of them go, oh, it saves us money by not offering because barely anyone. Yeah, but it doesn't really cost you any more if you just invest in a decent, like the network side of it, to offer the symmetric speeds.
I've always emailed them or whatever and been like, I'm a business. I actually need more upload than download, like more than anything for what I do. Please offer, do you have a package? And they're like, no, we don't. We're never going to offer you a package, because we'd like, even though they technically could, there is nothing that would stop them from just putting it on there are business packages that have things, but all of them are down heavy, because that's what the majority of users use. And they was like, you can go for a dedicated line, but that's £300 a month. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I remember looking at that for the old place, and I was like, no. And that was still like something like that was only for like 100. That's mad.
Yeah, I would. It's like
no way.
Please, internet. I mean, with service providers, give me equal connections here. I will. And the worst thing is that package is super expensive.
Mine's £40 a month for that, I think. Well, no, sorry. 38. I've just renewed.
Ours is about 75 a month for that. Like that being 40 upload, anything below any other the packages are like 20 upload, which for the amount of upload speed that I need when I stream sometimes is actually gets close, like where it will cause issues if I'm doing multiple encoding, etc.
I think though that broadly things will move along to offering symmetric speeds and higher upload, just because we're getting more and more tech that benefits from having faster upstreams, basically. So especially like in the age of working from home and having video calling and conferencing and stuff like that, it's going to be a little bit more of a priority, and providers that don't innovate and start offering those symmetric packages and higher speeds are eventually going to miss out.
This is the problem. Okay, we're going to get political a little bit now. Public infrastructure should not be owned by private companies. I'm sorry to say that in the age of information, a singular business should not be able to hold a town ransom via owning its essentially public infrastructure. Yes, they should be able to rent it, etc., and rent it to people. That's business. That's fine. But the actual ownership of lines, because the thing is, what a lot of people don't recognize is that companies own the lines and then rent it to the other service providers as well as you.
Until we had fiber, every like Sky Broadband, Vodafone, everything apart from Virgin,
it'll always be a Virgin Media line or it'll be a Virgin Media line or a BT line,
because it was OpenReach provided the infrastructure, and then they rented that out to Sky, to Tesco broadband, to all those ones. It's the same copper. It's not new cable. It's the same copper cable line coming in. The only one in the early days that was different was Virgin, because they were lining their own coaxial cables. And they thought, yeah, that'll do it, because I guess there's a little bit more speed, a little bit more reliable. And then obviously now the big push is to go to fiber, because it's far more future-proof. And long-term, usage of it. It's easy to repair. Well, it's straightforward to repair if you've got the right tools to re-splice the cables and stuff like that.
It's just an unfortunate thing about UK networks is that the stuff in the ground isn't owned by the government.
It's also a frustrating area because it's not like fully recognizes that it should be a base utility, like you get your electricity, your water.
Exactly. Well, no, but those are privately owned in the UK as well. This is a further topic, but
I think in terms of like the infrastructure provided, is like they're, most places, unless you're living right out in the middle of nowhere or breaking new ground somewhere, typically that when you buy somewhere, you're going to have water access and you're going to have electrical access. Like, whereas internet, like through our own experiences, is like, oh, I don't know what type I'm going to get. Like, is it going to be good or is it going to be awful?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm in a fortunate place. This little village that we're in now is, because of all the new builds that are going on around here, it's being bombarded by like 4 or 5 different fiber providers. But they're not just renting off the same. They're laying all their own fiber lines. So we've got like 4 or 5 separate fiber lines all around here, because there's like box broadband, there's city fiber, there's hyperoptic that we're on. Although hyperoptic only did the fiber here because they have a partnership with Redrow, who built our house, to provide every Redrow site with hyperfast fiber internet. And so they had to run a lot of cable out to here, because I think their next nearest hub was like probably 20 miles away. They'd already run, because everything pretty largely comes out like London or what have you. So they had to do like a large stretch out here, because they're like, oh, we're going to a remote little village. And then City Fiber are in the big 2 towns either side of the village. So they're like, we'll meet in the middle. Box were like, we're a local start. We like doing rural projects. We'll run our own community fiber in. The only issue is it really upsets the local residents, because they have to dig up the road every time to lay the next bit of fiber going in before they can reel it down into the old pipe works.
Are the potholes not deep enough that they can just shove it in?
you would think, oh look, there's the fiber entry point there. It's a pothole. In we go, lads. Come on. It's mad. Like, because you have cases like this where we've got so much fiber, and then you look at other areas where it's like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of a very large town. Well, not in the middle. I'm on the outskirts of a very large town, but
you should be able to choose whoever you want to for like provider wise, because you should have so many choices.
Yeah, I'm 5 minutes from 3 schools, like 1,000+ people schools that require good internet as well.
So they'll have it all to them. And it's like, just
legitimately, it stops outside my box.
One night,
stops at my box.
See a masked
my box
man
at the end of my road.
digging at a pothole and shoving some fiber cable in the splicer and it's midge.
So I get fiber to the box at the corner of my road because
So it's gone to the box, yeah.
And it's gone to the box, but there's nothing in my road, and so I'm still on the coaxial cables, I believe, of Virgin. Like that's what's owned on this road. It's like, oh. Anyway, that brings me nicely onto the next topic, slightly ish of storage. So this is the thing that I fill up all the time on my PC, despite having. Let me just count. So I have. In external storage, I have 5 terabytes. In internal storage, I have 2.5. I have another terabyte on direct Google Drive, and then something like 30 terabytes of storage on wider shared drives on Google. Legitimately, I have 162 gigs left on my boot drive. That's after clearing it because I filled it yesterday. Because it's just the way I work quite a lot. It's like I'll download something for a project and it will just be in my downloads folder and I'll work from my downloads folder or whatever. I've got like university dissertations that I've carried with me on this hard drive that has been going into this PC for 12 years at this point. Like I've got some stuff that definitely isn't needed, but storage is going to be a big thing for content creators, whether they're streaming with, as long as if you're recording at any sort of level these days, you're going to use so much data.
I'm going to recommend a handy bit of software that can, if you're trying to work out, like you need to clear up a drive and you're trying to work, where is the biggest portions of data? It's this program called WinDirStat. And basically it analyzes your drive and then shows it in kind of block partition images of where large files are. So it's good for navigating and something going, where's that massive project? Where did I hide that? And you can click on it. You can instantly open a path directly to it. I tend to use that maybe like once every 6 months to just have a bit of a cleanup across my drives, to go like, okay, because also suddenly I'll be like, why have I suddenly got like a load of Adobe cache file? What are those do? Like, and then I'll go through and I'll prune all those away. Stuff that I've downloaded, like loads of mods or asset packs. I always find that's quite useful rather than kind of like going through my drives going like, where's some big like files? Is that a big file? No, that's not a big file. Is that a big prod? No, that's not a big one.
Me out here using Windows Storage Viewer. I'm going to install this now.
Yeah, give it a go. It's quite useful. It gives you a nice, little view of all your little bits and pieces. I'm thankful that we're now at a point where storage isn't ridiculously expensive for high capacity, high speed stuff. I remember when the move from like hard drive to SSD kind of became a thing, and SSD price were like 400 quid for like maybe like 500 gig, and you'd be like, what? That's crazy. I'll stick with my hard drive, thanks. My noisy, worry hard drive, because I was like, I could spend 80 quid and buy a terabyte hard drive.
Now we're all on M.2s.
I have only just moved away from having a mechanical hard drive in my recording setup. My last PC had one, and I switched that halfway through its life cycle. And obviously with this new one I've got, I was like, can we just put in another M.2 stick while we're at it?
I still had a CD drive in my previous case.
Oh, I've not had a DVD drive for many a year. The thing is, like, cases now, most of like a vast majority of them aren't designed with any front trays. Like mine's all glass along the front and the sides, so it's like you'd have to put an external one, which probably is actually
better. It probably runs better because it's probably over USB-C now.
Probably a better, and it's a little bit more practical. I think I actually bought a Blu-ray drive because I wanted to watch Blu-rays on my PC or laptop at uni, I think it was. The thing is, you had to download a specific media player that had the right codec to play it, because like the Windows one didn't do it by default or something. So I think the one I bought, like, I think it was a Samsung one or something. So it came with like a Samsung Blu-ray viewer program. And I was like, I'll just play it through that. Totally other random thing. When we bought this house, when all the paperwork went through, our solicitors sent us a CD with all of it backed up on. Like they sent us all the paper copies and they were like, here's a CD with it all. And apparently that's still quite a very common thing for solicitors in the UK to do. Like once all your title deeds gone through and land registry, it normally takes like 6 to 12 months after you've completed and you're in. I got it all on a CD and I was like, yeah, because I can check this.
Could they not have gone for a USB stick? Like,
so you would think. I mean, I'm sure maybe more are moving towards that, but yeah, they just whacked on, and I was like, oh yeah, I can't view that. I was like, I don't have any. Like, I don't even have, like, laptops don't even have drives on them anymore.
Yeah, no, they don't.
So I was like, oh. Yeah, so I think actually the probably easiest way for me is to go to the library and go onto one of their old PCs and pop it in at the library.
They probably expect a lot of people who are on the property ladder to do.
Yeah, and also because printing, like who realistically regularly owns their own printer and prints from it, is like go to the library and print off stuff for like 50p for like 10 pages or whatever it is.
It's gone to a point where I use so much storage, and again, this is to go a bit more technical into this. So the way that I do my recordings is I have a split out source record for my camera and for my gameplay, and each of those are going, when I'm recording, at about 16,000 bits, which is the highest bit rate YouTube can accept. And oh my god, I just ran that WinStat and it's giving me those chunks. It looks like a
have fun clicking through some, being surprised by like, oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Early 2000s pinball game is what that looks like.
Yeah, it's a bit dated in its view, but it does a bang up job.
I wanna actually just share this so people can see what. There you go. This is my boot SSD apparently.
What's that big red chunky one?
Prime linked comp.
11 gig. Oh, I love it. Everyone always has a camera dump folder. Yeah.
Last change was 2022.
That's a good way of being like, yeah, you probably don't need that.
Christ. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to.
Macbeth photos.
Yeah, I directed a production of Macbeth at uni.
Nice.
In a chapel as well, and we set it as it was right around when Scotland was doing its independence referendum. So the idea was it was modern. Scotland had gotten its independence but needed to elect a king, and then had a civil war over it.
Oh,
was the
nice.
whole concept.
Nice. Yeah, it's good bit of tech for finding lost, forgotten files that you were like, oh, that's taking a massive. I don't need that anymore.
Well, that's my afternoon sorted. Go.
There you go. Enjoy.
So, for example, I recorded a stream. When was it? It was probably the last time I did a Fallout London stream. So let me just quickly tell you how big those files are. So, for example, the gameplay looks to be okay. That actually looks a little bit broken. We'll ignore that then. It's probably about 10 gig an hour for each file, like roughly. So, when I'm doing like a 7 hours Baldur's Gate 3 stream back in the day, it was like, yes, here is an 150 gigabyte video file of just my camera and microphone. I need a lot of storage all the time. And it's getting to a point where I'm like, do I get like a RAID system? Do I get some sort of really high transfer rate external hard drive?
Yeah, get like a NAS, I think. It's probably your best bet, because that will have stuff built into it.
But I don't think every creator will need it. It just depends on how much you want to like leave and record and forget.
Because we were talking about it before we jumped on today, and I was like, I've thought about NAS drives and stuff, and then I think kind of like, do I really want to add in more layers to the process but the thing is, I don't work with kind of highly edited projects that potentially I would spend a few weeks gathering all the recorded footage for and then having to put them all together. You would want to make sure all that footage is properly backed up, safely stored during that time. So if you work with more highly edited content rather than just stream recordings or just straightforward like long format let's plays or something, I typically go through my recordings folder like once or twice a week and just have a clear out of some of the older stuff in there, or wait until it goes red and then I'm like, oh no, I need to make sure we clear some space for that, because similar, I'm probably about 10 to 12 gig of raw recorded footage an hour, but obviously I'm set to like a dynamic recording bit rate for better efficiency there. So sometimes, depending on the game, like Crusader Kings 3 recordings will be much smaller in file size compared to Total War, where there's a lot more textures and just visual stuff happening. So that can also have an effect as well. Look into a big external drive, whack in the largest
M.2 you can.
M.2 drive that you can afford in your system, which, I mean, the prices are coming down. Like I was surprised when I think mine was like 250 for a 4 terabyte NVMe M.2 as well. So like as fast speeds as possible.
Yeah, the expensive ones are 8 terabyte ones, which are like still 700. But I was like,
The only thing I'm wary about is what the lifespan is of the M.2 with constant read writes. because this was the thing with SSDs. I think it was, I can't remember who exactly, but they use, I want to say it was actually someone saying about like Jesse Cox, actually. He burnt through like an SSD every 3 months because of just the regular amount of recording, because it was I've killed one SSD. Actually, no, I've killed an M.2 drive. It's still alive, but if I try and render a video to it, the whole PC will crash on when it hits 100%, when it actually completes the write, because it was on my render PC that I have off to the side, and I just abused that for about 2 or 3 years, constantly rendering to it daily, and it eventually gave out. And that was an M.2. I think, though, it was actually more a case of, it wasn't necessarily just the constant writing to it. It was also that it was overheating, because it's in an ITX small form factor build, and it had a separate little fan that sat over the top of it, but I don't think it ever sat properly flush to it. And I've always meant to try and tweak it, but one did die. But I remember a while back, it was still more viable to use a traditional hard drive, because they were far longer lifespan of constantly reading and writing to all the time than an SSD, because I think of overheating issues with the form factor. Essentially, I don't think that's as a big of a problem now with M.2, because a lot smaller, there's the heat is dissipated far more effectively, especially if you've got like a nice high airflow case and things like that. You don't really have to worry, because it's not the reading that's the problem, it's the constant writing to it. Like, you could probably read off a drive pretty much indefinitely, but constantly writing, there is going to be a point where you go over that threshold of 50 million writes or whatever it is, and that will be the one that probably pushes the drive to go, no, I can't work anymore, I'm dead. But you would obviously hope that it's not like every few months having to replace drives. I think maybe it was even a tweet you put out or something. It was like, oh, just gone through my next hard drive, off to get another SSD or something like that. But like churning through that much content, yeah.
Let's also just dive into our PC builds and what we actually use for our systems, and what we think the minimums today would be, what we're looking for say a basic streaming recording rig. Like, I think that would be a really cool thing. And also, just on the reason I'm going to siphon over to this topic is talking about things giving up. For a good 8 of the 10 years ish that I've been a content creator, my rig had my faithful, I got it in 2016, so I had it from 2016 until last year when I upgraded my GPU. Or was it the year before now? It might be year before now. And I was telling everybody I can see through sound.
The visuals.
I went from a 980 Ti to a 3090 Ti, which is
that's a substantial
generational
upgrade. You're jumping 3 generations there.
But that's also from GTX to RTX. So that was pre ray tracing,
all the benefits of that.
That poor GPU. The day I pulled that out of the PC, and the reason I upgraded was like, I don't know how long, because I work my PCs to the bone, because they're rendering like every day. At the very least, there's going to be at least, especially when I was like at high levels of work, there would be like possibly even at times an After Effects render every day. Heavy GPU encoding. I was like, this is a 980 Ti from 2016. This thing is not meant to go the way that it's going. I'm surprised it's still alive.
I mean, they were solid cards.
Absolutely.
They were the creme de la creme of that last generation of.
The moment I took it out of the PC, 2 fan blades fell out of it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it like it just burned up and just disappeared into ashes into the ether.
No, I still have it. She remains in the cupboard in her Valhalla. It was like one of those moments of, oh, the fan is still attached, but the blades came off. That's how much it had like worked. It was like to the bone. I think it also comes from having a bit more money these days. It's like, oh, could I finance a 4090 now, even though I've got a 3090 Ti because of the new encoding? And it's like, not everyone needs these things. So what I currently run is I have my 3090 Ti. It's an EVGA card that I got on deep discount. I then have 128 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM at 3600 clock. I have a Ryzen 5800X, which is one of the best Ryzen AMD 4 cards there are, but that's AMD 4 chipset today, still holds up really well. and is super cheap right now. I could only have dreamed of a CPU this powerful for 100 quid back when I was gaming. But like, if you're looking for a chipset, that's a decent chipset.
AMD, their Ryzen stuff has been a cracking success since its original launch, since its 1000 series. But now it's just steaming ahead to new heights.
Yeah, I was so anti AMD for a long time because I had like AMD laptops, a lot of AMD that died constantly, and
no matter how they tried to position themselves, yes, they were always the cheaper alternative, but they were never like.
But it showed.
But it showed because the performance was never like at a reasonable level. Like Intel's offering for typically like 20 to 50 pounds more would be such a more consistent, better performance until Ryzen. And obviously Intel are not doing well right now.
Threadrippers were all right.
But I mean, that was kind of just before that was built. I think that was like almost the preview of some of the Ryzen tech they were developing. They were like, this is the high end grade stuff. We're going to make the consumer stuff and call it our Ryzen like lineup, especially with how Intel is right now. I mean, I've got an Intel CPU. I love it. I've had to do some tweaking though to stop it degrading and killing itself basically because of some microcode issues and stuff. I still really like Intel, but if I had the option for getting an AMD one in the Player 3 Prime lineup that NZXT offer, then I probably would be up for having an AMD system as well for the CPU.
I still will not touch everyone's like, oh yeah, get one of the Ryzen cards now, and I'm like, no.
AMD haven't been able to sprinkle the same magic they did to their Ryzen CPUs to their GPUs yet. When they do, because I think they will do it eventually, when they do, watch out. But Nvidia, one, more expensive, and yes, the AMD performance is getting closer. I think you get a better ecosystem with the Nvidia options right now in terms of, especially as a content creator, because of all their like AI and RTX tech for noise suppression, noise cancelling, as well as encoding. That's the biggest thing. The encoding with Nvidia is solid.
Also, top tip, if you're a content creator and you're using an Nvidia card, game drivers are a lie. Go for the studio drivers. It's if you're doing heavy rendering in any way, shape, or form. If you're multi-encoding on your CPU,
more tuned and optimized.
They're more stable, more optimized. If you're doing video editing, that kind of thing, studio drivers are going to be your way forward. It's and it's literally, you can still get it in your GeForce Now experience or whatever it is. It's just a drop down. And you can swap between if you want to.
Find which drivers work for you, but definitely if you haven't tried studio drivers before, you're missing out.
But yeah, so I'm still Nvidia on my card. And I said, yeah, I've got loads of storage, mix of M.2 and SSD. What else is a key feature? Oh, and then I've got, it's a Corsair case, Corsair fans, Corsair cooler. The RAM, I think, is Corsair. Like, I'm a bit of and I got a 1,000-watt power supply. And it's all so I like the majority of my board is Asus. The only thing that isn't Asus or Corsair in that build is the GPU right now, and that was out of. This one's on a really good deal. I'm getting it because normally I try to stick with one or two manufacturers to eliminate any wonky thing that could happen when I buy PC parts in terms of compatibility. I know that that's a low chance, but I've had it before where I've had RAM not be compatible with my GPU before in an older build. I don't remember exactly. I think it was a HyperX RAM, and I know it was an Nvidia card, but I got it from. Can't remember who it was by because maybe it was a Gigabyte one. I can't remember. I bought it from PC World. It's way back in the day. So I try to keep the brands as close to as possible because at least at the very same time, that it will be under the kind of the same warranty code, and if they'd also have a better idea to be able to point you into specifics for tests, for example, because in theory their stuff should work together.
They can't pass the blame on to be like, oh, it's going to be that other brand's card or thing that you're like, it's all yours, guys.
Yep. So that's kind of why I go for those. I don't think anybody in their right mind, outside of someone who does like full scale production stuff like I do, will need 128 gigabytes of RAM. But at the same time, a lot of pre-builts used to, at least in laptops, etc., came with 16. I think that's slightly too small, especially if you're streaming and recording. And playing games on like one rig.
Yeah, I'd say 32 would be like a minimum for content creation. If you're just gaming, 16 is still fine. I mean, there's starting to be a few games that are like, if you've got more RAM, great, utilize it. If you're looking at a rig and you just want to do it for gaming and you're thinking, oh, where can I save a little bit of money? 16 gig of RAM will be fine. You can always upgrade it. That's the thing. It's straightforward to upgrade. Unless you need that higher capacity to start with, you can probably drop that down. I remember when I used to say like, oh yeah, 8 gig's fine. And now we're like at least 16, I think, if you're gaming, but if you're going into content creation, 32 or 64. Adobe will love you if with the more RAM you have, the more you can feed Adobe. Basically, it's not about how hungry Adobe is, because Adobe is perpetually ravenous. If you can give it more RAM, it will eat it. Yeah, exactly. It is. It's just like in the settings, it just goes, oh, you've gone from 32 gigs to 64. Cool. Well, I'm going to go from my allocation being 28 gigs to 56. Thanks. Nom 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 nom.
I physically allocate the Adobe Suite 90 gigs of RAM, or enough that, so with 128 gigs, it leaves me about 32 to still play with. It's kind of the idea. And then the rest is just like all in the Adobe. The thing that I think is capping my massive PC at the moment more than anything, it's actually my CPU.
Which one is it again?
I got a Ryzen, I got a 5800X. The only CPU better than that is the 5950 I think, in terms of price and things.
Otherwise, you have to socket change, then it's new motherboard, yeah.
Because going past that is going to AM5, new board, new CPU, new RAM, and I do not have that kind of money right now, because again, I would want to go for at least 64 gigs of RAM.
It'll be
AM5 is DDR5 only.
Yeah, there might be some now that support, because that's the one thing I think is still quite outrageously expensive is DDR5 RAM. It peaked and it is starting to drop, but it's not dropped to like reasonable levels yet. AM5
sockets only launched on DDR5 boards, which was disgusting, because you can still get AM5 socket CPU from AMD for a really reasonable price, but my god, my god, am I not going for Corsair? As much as I love you, Corsair, I cannot afford your DDR5 RAM. Although the RAM would be, the clock on that RAM would be so excellent, and I would love it. I have to be reasonable with myself. I lasted 12 years, like 10 years on my previous PC structure, essentially.
You'll get there eventually, yeah.
Give me 5 years, I'll be there. But it's like one of those things of right now, if I did that, I'm just being a little spendthrifty boy, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you're right. I've just looked. Yeah, I think all AM5 sockets are purely DDR5.
And with the price of what the 5950 3DX is right now, I am still considering just getting it just for that little.
How much is it?
It's like just shy of 300, I think.
Because you could get a Ryzen 9 7900X3D for 339.
Yeah, I know, which is an AM5 socket. I know.
So basically, the thing is, you'll probably spend double that on the full setup, motherboard and stuff.
I feel like they are priced well for the market.
Yeah, they are. They're really attractive.
Really attractive price. You also, you know that you're going to, okay, I'm never going to have to worry about it. Like the general consumer and general creator will not cap out this CPU. One, the amount of things that I do that require CPU encoding. Two, I play certain games that also, for some reason, are CPU hungry. For example, Crusader Kings right now has a bit of a CPU leak in it, that certain event pop-ups will just max out your CPU usage. And when I'm already using 50%, that can be a bit of a problem. And like my PC will lock up. But again, like that's my threshold. But at the same time, if I don't do anything to my PC, I could still make this work for what I wanted to do, probably for the next 10 years. You do not have to be as ridiculous as I am. So let's talk what we think the basic build will be these days. What would you say would be a solid, basic content creator PC build? Let's PC part picker in our brains what we would put in. So we've already said at least 32 gigs of RAM. What are we looking for in like CPU, GPU sort of power?
Depends how heavy you're going to be. I mean, if you're just streaming, minimal video editing. I mean, the thing is, you still want to go in for a little bit of future proofing and stuff like that. I'd say something like, if you want to go for Intel, like I'd say like an i7. But I think unless you have a very niche bit of software that specifically performs better on Intel, you're probably better off for the CPU. going for an AMD option. Broadly, they're pretty much like for like, with, you know, depend a bit of price here and there. Depends on what you want if you have a specific motherboard in mind that's only an AMD socket or an Intel socket. A lot of it right now is that they've never been closer. AMD excel in some bits, Intel still have the edge in other bits. AMD are pulling ahead and often are far more appealing because they're cheaper with the same performance of a much more expensive Intel chip. So, like, ultimately, you can still go for what you want, but if you aren't considering an AMD CPU, you should definitely at least take a look at some of what they've got on offer. I'd say like a Ryzen 7 or an Intel i7.
I know some people stream on a Ryzen 5, but I think as soon as you bring like local recording and editing into the frame, is like, I think you go for...
It's better to go up to the 7, I would say, as something that is going to be more than what you need right now, but is also going to future-proof you fairly well. So you're going to get better long-term value for your money for going for an AMD Ryzen 5. Same with going for an Intel i7 over an i5. i5 will certainly, if you're just gaming, go for the i5. If you're just gaming, go for the AMD Ryzen 5. Totally fine. Unless you're pushing into 4K gaming and stuff like that, and then you'll want a Ryzen 7 and an Intel i7 and stuff like that. You know, some people are going to be like, what about a Ryzen 9 or like Threadrippers or, you know, Intel i9s and stuff like that? Only if you're doing heavy amounts of rendering, editing work or 3D modeling, you're going to need those. I mean, I don't actually think Threadrippers are worth it unless you're doing dedicated like CAD modeling, because they have specific optimizations for that. They're not actually particularly great. They will run games and stuff, but they're not particularly great for gaming performance. You're better off with a Ryzen 9 because they are still built for gaming and also have great mod. They're basically like a Threadripper Lite, but with all the added improvements and performance for single core applications and gaming and stuff like that. But even then, jumping up to a Ryzen 9 is like not necessarily something you need to do unless you're looking for probably full 4K content creation, rendering and editing, 3D modeling, and same with an Intel i9 as well. Obviously, going up to those more powerful ones, you've also got to think about improved cooling as well, because they're going to run hotter. They're going to need more power, so you need to make sure that, you know, your power supply is up to scratch anyway. I mean, if you're looking at the top end of graphics cards as well, you're going to be wanting to go for like 1,000-watt gold rated PSU anyway, which will be enough for your CPUs and stuff like that. The only time where you might need something more is if you're doing maybe like a custom water cooled loop or something.
I am closed loop CPU cooler fanboy. That's how, like, closed use CPU with a radiator and then the rest is all fan cools. That's how I build.
Yeah, all in one coolers. They're perfectly fine. Like some people always have this, like, I think, again, my opinion, I think it's almost an irrational fear of all-in-one coolers. They're like, oh, I'd rather have an air one because I don't want to touch the all-in-one. They're all sealed. You can't get into them. You can't top them up or anything like that.
If you do, you've done something very wrong. Where have you impaled that screwdriver?
The thing is, there are some people that prefer high airflow, and there's obviously there's still quite a few like cases that are designed as high airflow cases, not just for drawing air in, but also then work a bit more optimally with an air cooler on your CPU. The caveat to that is increased noise, which as a creator, you want your PC as quiet as possible. Even if all your intake and exhaust fans are running fairly loud, don't add in a what's going to be a loud cooler in there as well. Okay, you can get quieter fans and you can tweak the profiles. You're probably going to be better off with an all-in-one. For something like the Ryzen 9s or the Intel i9s, you're going to want a 360 triple fan cooling solution. I mean, mine, when rendering, I think with its current one, tops out at like 70 degrees, which is pretty cool for an i9 working its arse off, which is great. And also, if you've got an efficient cooler, it's going to make the rest of your components love you as well, because there's less excess heat hitting them, which is going to make them run hotter as well.
I think creators have a good choice right now to either go in cheaply at the top end of like AM4 or last generation CPUs on Intel, etc. and stuff.
Definitely. There's some great deals that can be had.
And DDR4 RAM. There's some seriously powerful PCs that, as when I started content creation, I could only dream of, because they would have been so beyond, like, double top of the range back then. I think the 20 series cards for GPUs as well, still super solid for everything that you'd want to do, like, as a basic content creator. You don't need to go 30 or 40 series. However, I would say future-proof yourself. Probably GPU is the way to do it, especially as 50 series cards might be around the corner. If you're planning on a build, maybe wait for the 50 series cards to drop and then pick up a 30 or a 40.
Unless you need a PC tomorrow.
Yeah. Just give yourself a little bit of time.
Yeah, wait for the next gen of cards, even if you're not planning to get them, because it means the previous gen will be end of life, so they won't be making any more. So you'll probably get some decent deals picking up, 4080s and stuff cheaper.
You also get a lot of secondhand stuff as well appearing. Like you'll see people selling off their 40 series to get the 50 series.
Just make sure it's not come from a miner home. You don't want an ex-crypto mining card.
That's true. That's very, very true.
I think actually, to be honest, now is the time where I'm most wariest about the secondhand GPU market, because there's so many high intensity crypto stuff or just other applications that your GPUs can be run into the ground with. The secondhand market used to be, yeah, it's been in my gaming rig for all this time. That's all it's done, just gamed. And you'd be like, okay, that's fine. It's been doing what it was designed to do. All the other things that they can be used, okay, I mean, it's still within what it's kind of been designed to do, but it's been run at like 110% power throughput, because that's essentially how you tweak them to be more efficient. You run more power through the cards, which, as long as you can cool them, is fine. The card will still work, but it's going to shorten its lifespan, and maybe for less intensive applications, which compared to like mining, gaming is going to be less intensive for it. It's going to go, I can't run at peak performance anymore. That hurts me. I'm going to run at 20 FPS lower than I should. And you'll be like, why is this?
I retract my statement. I actually agree with you. I totally agree.
Because you end up buying one, maybe you've saved 150 quid on one, but you then end up having to replace it with a brand new one because it's busted after sort of 6 months. Unless you can verify, it's your mate, he's bought it for gaming, he's giving up on gaming, or he's moving and he's having to sell his epic gaming rig, and you know what he's done with it, then I would say, yeah, it's just not worth it. I mean, maybe you'll pot luck. If you've got money to waste, you do you with what you want to do with your money ultimately. But if you're looking at GPUs, probably a better option would be look at maybe if there's one that you can buy it where you can pay in 3 or some financing options and spread the cost that way. Get it brand new, get it with that warranty. You're just covered. You got a bit more peace of mind, I think. Or taking kind of all the hardware advice that we've mentioned today, have a look at some pre-builts, because there has never been a better time, to be honest. They are so competitively priced now, and the extra maybe £100 or so markup, $100 markup that you get versus building it yourself includes like probably 2 or 3 years worth of warranty. They'll come and collect it, take it away, send it back. Sponsor bias here. I've had 2 pre-built sponsors. I'm now with NZXT. I was previously for 2 years with Lenovo Legion. Previous to that, though, I had built all my PCs from parts. I loved doing it. Okay, there's the stress and hassle of suddenly getting a dud part and having to swap that out. But I'd never really entertained pre-builts before that, because they were just, £500-600 additional marked up cost to them. Now the prices have dropped way lower, and also just the build quality, something that both Legion did well and something that NZXT do incredibly well, and that's because they come from a legacy of doing custom cases. And I think that's what really makes NZXT stand out, is that their pre-built systems don't look like pre-builts. They look like, top end, high performance showpieces, almost, which, their top end cases, their H9, their Player 3 Prime, which is what I've got, is just a stunning bit of kit to look at. And if you show that to someone and went, here's my new PC, they'd be like, oh, cool. What did you build in it? I don't think anyone would look at it and go, oh, that's pre-built. And also, I think really the kind of the stigma.
That's actually huge. Actually, you've put onto a really good point of pre-builts don't look like pre-builts anymore. Pre-builts always used to have that, we're in
because
this.
They had OEM parts, or they had like non-standard parts. Because a lot of people go, don't buy a pre-built because you can't upgrade them. Vast majority of pre-built PCs now, like this was true maybe 5 or 6 years ago, be wary of upgrading on pre-builts. Now, everything in this from NZXT fully upgraded. Everything is standard. Everything is, they have just built a custom PC themselves, and they've just called it their pre-built, basically. There is nothing OEM in their setup. Not just NZXT, a lot of others as well. Obviously, do your research, check them out, because there are still like some of the Dell Alienware ones still use some custom case stuff, which a custom case I wouldn't really say fully falls into that, but they do have some weird and wonderful storage bits and case OEM parts. But something like NZXT, where they're using their own full custom cases from their lineup, they're using their full custom cooling solutions, all their fans and everything. And then I've got a mix of brands in terms of rest of the components. It's a Gigabyte board, it's Kingston Fury RAM, it's a PNY 4090 in it, and I think Kingston storage in there. So it's a full mix. It's not OEM pre-built stock parts, obviously with an Intel CPU and stuff like that. They are very viable. Like, have a look, because you might find there's decent deals and discounts out there.
As the person here who isn't sponsored by NZXT, I will say from what from what I've seen.
Yeah, because obviously sprinkle all the salt on what I just said. The reason why hopefully it's coming across that I'm really passionate about it is because I really appreciate the value, and I believe fully in it. I wouldn't agree to work with these sponsors. Believe that, or not, if you will, but that's my ethos on it. I wouldn't work with them if I wasn't a true believer in actually the value and the performance you're getting from one of their pre-built systems, from someone that spent probably 10 to 12 years of their life building PCs from parts. I now, if I was looking to get a brand new system, would probably buy a pre-built for the ease and no hassle.
I don't think I would directly,
because you need some specific tweaks and non-standard things. Yeah.
That, and also at the same time, I don't think I would short doing a pre-built as a baseline and then adding the 2-3 extra little bits I'd like. As someone who is always very, very, oh no, don't go pre-built. And then I've seen the NZXT stuff, and I've seen some of the other stuff out there right now. It's like, actually just go for the pre-built. It's far better than it. To be fair, sometimes it's cheaper than, as expensive these days as getting, because they can get like direct from supplier. Sometimes it's as good as you buying all the parts on Newegg and then spending 3 hours screaming at yourself.
Yeah, same value, but you're getting free warranty, and
also you don't have that butt pucker fear of trying to push the GPU into the socket and going, oh god, am I going to break it? Or like, have I put the CPU in right? Have I put the pins down correctly?
Is the RAM slot meant to make a snap sound like that?
I feel like I'm pushing harder than I should be. Is it not just all gonna...
Have I over tightened the screws? I will say as well though, if you are wanting something a bit more custom in terms of higher configuration stuff, never hurts to give them a call or an email if you're looking for a pre-built one, saying, look, could we actually upgrade this with some additional bits here and here? They may well do it for you, because ultimately they want a sale as much as you want to buy a PC. And especially with these ones that do essentially full custom pre-builts, it's always worth asking. Pre-builts are certainly now a very viable option for creators, and obviously gamers as well. There's so many options out there. I think a lot of the reason why we've seen the rise of pre-builts more and actually becoming more competitively priced for building it yourself is also just the rise in PC gaming in itself, and a lot of people coming from, say, console gaming, where you buy a console, it's plug and play. That's the experience that PC builders and pre-built sellers want to mimic. They want you to get a PC. Okay, you have to spend a little bit more time on setup, like going through the Windows install and what have you, but it's no different really to kind of plugging in your console for the first time, naming your profile, setting everything up and what have you there, and then getting your games installed. So that's the experience I think that they are desperate to kind of capture, and also they want to long term keep those customers in that ecosystem. So they know that there needs to be decent warranty, decent aftercare. When you do want to then upgrade your PC, they want you to do it through them. They want you to buy their upgraded part, know that it's going to be supported by that system and setup that they provided.
One final thing I would say to take into account when building a PC, you're going to use a lot of USB sockets and stuff like that. So when picking your case, when picking your board, take into account USB, USB-C, for both external drives, peripherals, all sorts of things. For example, my mixer, we've spoken about audio equipment stuff. My Rode Procaster 2 uses 2 USB-Cs, which is the entirety of the USB-C on my PC.
And you'll also find that high power draw things like mixers often need to be made sure they're running on their own separate part of the bus within the motherboard and CPU.
Quick tip as well, make sure you have when in your BIOS on your PC, make sure you have power to USBs off before boot, because what I had, and it was a problem I was having for ages, was my PC would only boot if my mixer was on. And the reason for that is it was trying to take the power for the boot cycle through the USB-C, because you can do that now. And it was avoiding my PSU. So there's a lot of little funky things there. And the other thing is, check out your PCIe slots. If you're going to be using an internal or external capture card, make that decision as well.
Most creators are going to be, either the capture cards going in those PCI slots or an additional USB expansions card, which is what I have in mine, because I would just want to make sure I've got enough separate slots. There's enough on the back of this motherboard, which is great, but I still prefer to have some separately.
Oh, you need to for power distribution.
Plugged in, so I know that they're not going to be overloaded, because that's when you get your camera constantly disconnecting or your mixer disconnecting and sound changing.
I am legitimately thinking of getting a PCIe USB-C card for my final slot.
Yeah, I've got one that I think's got 5 Type A slots and 2 Type C.
And I'm thinking of doing it and moving both inputs for my mixer down there.
Yeah,
so they're both away from
literally what I do. Yeah,
Mixer's
on its own special card.
Essentially, yeah,
gets its own special slots.
Its own version of sound cards. Do you remember having to get extra sound cards?
Sound Blaster XF.
Well, yeah, it was always the most metal looking thing in the PC.
They look really cool.
Anyway, I think that's time for us today. We basically discussed building a PC. Is kind of where this one went, but I think it was kind of a necessity. I think that's a question that everyone's going to ask. And I will say, I know that there's people that have submitted to the podcast for other bits and pieces, such as their setups before, who are like, oh, if I have upgrade questions, can I ask them? Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. We're happy to dive into that as well.
I think it would be really cool if you have a use case of, here's all the types of content creation I want to do. Here's what I currently do. Essentially, help me design my bespoke setup. We live for that. Problem I think that you'll listen to with this episode and think is that we didn't really directly answer a question. We were very vague. That's because every use case is different. My content creation setup is so different to Lionheart's. We didn't even get onto the fact that you used dual PC for a little while.
We'll do that another time. Dual PC craziness. Yeah.
Do send things in. Ask us, query. So remember to get in touch via the Discord, as well as our email, hello@uploadpodcast.co.uk. I guess we'll see you next time we upload.